And we're going to have one more presentation before a break. I guess we're going to go a little bit more to the cosmic level and talk about archetypal astrology. And I believe that our dear friend Chad Harris is almost ready. Chad has been doing the recording for today, so I would like to give him another shout out, another bit of appreciation for his technical expertise. And as he's about to demonstrate, he is wise and skillful in many other ways. So let's hear it for Chad Harris.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so let's see. Hopefully it's going to work. Yes. I'd planned, unfortunately, to read it from here, so I'm going to have to do it from there. But first of all, I'd just like to thank Brian, Darren, Rand, and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for your talk. I actually feel like hopefully this is going to move in similar directions, even though it's a very different talk. And I'd also like to thank Rick Tarnas, because as most of you will know, a lot of this thought process comes from him. So I would just like to offer some of these insights. What I'm going to do, unfortunately, is read through it because it's the only way I can do it. But hopefully it's 10 slides, so a minute or less on each slide. We'll get 10 minutes in, and then we'll have dialogue. So I'm hoping that's the way it works. So, okay. Archetypal astrology as a cosmic affirmation for Platonic philosophy and universal agape, or proof the universe actually loves you. Can you guys hear me? Is it coming through here? No? Go to number 2 and just turn it up a little bit. So, what I'm going to do actually is describe 2 or 3 Platonic ideas. Not that Plato came up with them, but more of like a synthesizer. I think maybe he did come up with some of them. But first of all, let's start with the nous. It's recognized as being the divine mind, the archetypal principle of reason and logos, like language, articulation, strong relationship to the sun, like sun as the logos, and it corresponds to intellect, intelligence, awareness. In Plato's Philebus, Socrates states, nous is the king of heaven and earth. It's like this kind of sovereign deity above. And Plato, I think, pointed out that there's a special relationship between the human mind and the nous is what actually makes the cosmos intelligible. It makes it possible for us to actually know it, is because our mind has like a special relationship with actually the mind of God. Which is interesting. Athena in the myth is the goddess of wisdom, which literally means God's mind. And you can see I highlighted it's like Atheanoa. So theo or theos is God and nous is the mind. So noua is the feminine form of nous. And from which they derived their city-state name, which is Athens. And it's like, in this period, it seems to me as like one of the earliest kind of impulses towards psychology. I've heard like Buddha's like recognized as kind of one of the first psychologists, but he also existed around this time. So in Socrates, like I also think this is maybe the one thing we know he actually said or actually wrote down. I could be wrong about that, but know thyself. It's like it's definitely an impulse towards self-reflection, and the whole principle is like working towards nous and then understanding how our relationship is with that. So it's a self-reflective process in general, I think. So the archetypal ideas or forms. Plato's apprehension of an archetypal transcendent dimension to the cosmos that is, in some crucial, albeit mysterious way, both transpersonal and immanent, simultaneously residing in the eternal, apeiron is the Greek, while also our temporal experience of reality in the world. These universal principles were recognized to be a priori infinite, unchanging, perfect, and immortal, similar to the seemingly eternal and unchanging positions of the stars in the numinous night sky, where in contrast, the temporal world of nature and human civilization is subject to the earthly realm of change, growth, decay, pain, suffering, and inevitable mortality. There's a strong focus on the moral and civil obligations, justice, virtue, striving for human excellence, a quest to attain the most noble life, and a perfect city-state, a sustained attempt to align the human soul and life in accordance with the eternal and unchanging perfection of the cosmos. So these, the good, the true, and the beautiful, don't believe they were Plato's actual concepts, but in a synthesis, it's interesting because these are understood as like a trinity of what informs God, or like the creative principle of the universe. And so everything that's good is also true, and everything that's true is good, but everything that's true is also beautiful. Everything that's beautiful is true, and everything that's beautiful is also good. So they mutually are reinforcing each other and in communication. And on some level, it's a recognition of the beneficence of the creative impulse. So I do believe Plato actually potentially came up with this. I mean, if he didn't, he definitely synthesized it in a strong way. And he had a strong conviction of an eternal perfection and intelligibility of a numinous cosmos led him to believe that it was not an actual wandering motion governing the planets, which planet means wandering Greek, most of you know, I'm sure. But instead, he proposed the problem of the planets to all astronomers, astrologers, mathematicians, philosophers, to find the simple, elegant, mathematical reason for why they seem to have erratic or non-orderly orbits. This quest is also referred to as saving the phenomena, which was not realized until nearly 2,500 years later at the onset of the first contractions of modernity, the Copernican revolution. So at the Copernican revolution, Copernicus liberated the sun. We went from the center of meaning and purpose and fixed, and everything else was moving around us, to becoming one planet, And this was a radical shift in consciousness. Let's see, and it significantly, rendered a more accurate picture of the cosmos, obviously. We're not the center of the universe. Significantly accelerated and the forging of individual human autonomy and freedom, which inevitably led to an inflation of the ego towards hubris. It deepened a perception of a division between a separate subjective sense of self that acts upon an objectified world, rather than from a sense of being within and acting in concert within the world. So it's a very different relationship that we moved into, whereas prior we saw ourselves embedded in an enchanted cosmos, and then because the human mind had figured out something that no other previous mode of knowledge had actually been able to recognize, we became inflated in our own sense of superiority or intellect, superior to nature itself, ultimately. This is kind of just what happened. Let's see. Did you want to say something? No. Okay, so eventually leading to a deeply disenchanted cosmology and ultimately creating the need for personal psychology. And I'll unpack that a little bit. So in this time, in the modern period from Copernicus to basically the turn of the 20th century, we discovered the three outer planets, which were also crucial in the same way of the Copernican revolution, of like figuring out, more accurate understanding of our heavens. So this radically deepens and expands a formerly incomplete astrological planetary pantheon. Sorry, I need some water. Supports a more substantial understanding of the transpersonal nature of the psyche, allows for a transpersonal or a collective, therefore more objective understanding of history, reinforced through cross-cultural qualitative evaluations of historical periods that consistently correlate with the archetypal dynamics inflected by the planetary alignments of the time period under evaluation. Does that make sense? Because what I'm trying to say is, like, because we discovered the three outer planets, thanks a lot. it allows, it connects to the transpersonal dimension of our psyches, but it also allows us to study cultural history in a way that wasn't possible before the discovery of the outer planets. Because the inner planets do smaller cycles, and the outer planets seem to color, decades worth of time. And what I'm also trying to say here is that there's many historians that are writing about these time periods without any knowledge of astrology, and I believe if we look at their writings, we will be able to see archetypal qualities that are resonant with each other and resonant with the planetary alignments under the period that they're studying. So when I say it's more objective, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like it's not a personal subjective potential delusion that astrology is constantly kind of marginalized for, but yet this would be evidence from around the world by people who aren't studying astrology and then write about it, but in ways that are actually accurate to the planetary alignments of that time period. So in my mind, this is an empirically more validable or observable phenomenon that potentially leaves us in a more objective ability to discern more accurately what's happening. The development of depth in transpersonal and archetypal psychology. Gradually, after the brilliant, emancipating Copernican insight, the human being's relationship to the cosmos transformed from a sense of centrality, of cosmic purpose and meaning, towards an inflated, hubristic, and even dominant stance over what had been recognized as a randomly evolving mechanistic universe. This leads directly to Nietzsche's proclamation of the death of God. Also, later, it leads to Jung's quote. He says, "Since the stars have fallen from heaven and our highest symbols have paled, a secret life holds sway in the unconscious. That is why we have a psychology today and why we speak of the unconscious." All of this would be quite superfluous in an age or culture that possessed symbols. And I would say more accurate, like possessed living symbols that were grounded in nature. But what's interesting about this and where we went with the Copernican revolution was like that sense of inflation that it's wonderful because it individuated us all. We're all more individuous, autonomous people, but that acceleration of selfhood and ego, it creates a strong light, and that in turn creates a big shadow. And so that's why Jung is saying this. It's like literally we've become so bright in our brilliance and our understanding of reality, we've also created a giant shadow that we're not seeing. And so therefore it's helpful for us to do lots of deep self-reflection to try and see the things that we're not seeing about ourselves. So in conclusion, I have 2 pages of this, but unlike previous overarching meta-narratives in history which claim a singularly privileged access to a higher level of truth, the post-Copernican, post-modern, reformulated archetypal astrological perspective is an inclusive system. Its metaphysical flexibility allows for any form of epistemology, science, religion, or any other systematic mode of ascertaining the nature of reality to retain their integrity in and of themselves rather than being marginalized by an assertion of an exclusive or hegemonic claim to the truth. And I really believe that that's where astrology is kind of different than other meta-narratives that have, tried to give like a holistic picture of reality, because they tend to say, well, we got the picture and that's it. But astrology actually supports history. You can see the history of philosophy, the history of psychology, the history of politics and war. You can see them archetypally in the movements of the planet. So they're not discounting all those. You can see religious movements. It doesn't negate them. It supports them. It informs them. It gives us more insight into the interiority of why the qualities of how it emerged. So it's not negating it, but on some level, that empirical capacity I was talking about before with history, that's the part about astrology that I really feel like is different than tarot or any other mode of knowledge, really, because nothing else that I've seen actually is grounded in nature. And that's the big difference with astrology. So what does it mean for the deepest, most intimate interiority of the human psyche, the depth and character of the human soul to be mirrored in, commensurate with, the movement of, for what millennia were recognized as gods. The postmodern reformulated archetypal astrological vision recovers, in part, a Platonic vision of an enchanted or ensouled cosmos. This renders a deep participatory relationship between the human psyche/soul and the movement of the largest patterns in nature we are aware of, the celestial movements, motions of the heavens. Furthermore, it restores a centrality of meaning, not to the earth as the center, but now every individual human being is recognized to be a center of meaning and purpose, with its own unique capacity for an intelligible relationship with a loving cosmos. Through the careful study of one's birth chart and transits throughout one's life, every individual potentially can develop their own personal relationship with the creative intelligence of the universe, the archetypes, and their coherence with the depths of one's soul, or, if you prefer, the divine order of meaning and purpose. That's just my intuition on it. So, you might have remembered this slide from before. This is the last slide, by the way. And I think what is happening is, before, God was in the middle. And I think literally what's happening is we're moving into a new relationship with the cosmos where we've been aligning ourselves with the divine for the last 2,500 years or more. And in that process, I think we're actually preparing ourselves to recognize that we are. Because if we see the heavens as divine, and then they are actually reflecting the deepest parts of our psyche, like the innermost private interior parts of who we are, then we are that. It's not separate. We are connected deeply to what we recognize as the divine itself. And not only that, I mean, we have godlike power. We have nuclear weapons that can destroy all life on Earth. If that's not godlike, I don't know really what is, but we have a tremendous level of consciousness. And I'll end here. And I wasn't going to say this, but I think the Promethean myth is actually really important for just in general where we're at. And that is that, Prometheus believed that humanity was worthy of consciousness, and the rest of the gods didn't. And so that's why he had to steal it from Zeus in a trick. So he tricked Zeus and stole the fire and gave it to humanity. And on some level, it kind of seems like that's our dilemma. Are we worthy of consciousness? If we are, we'll make the changes that we need to in order to survive. If we're literally not, yet, hopefully we will be if we're all reincarnated again on another planet or whatever. I mean, I actually think that might be happening, but I have a lot of hope, tremendous amount of hope, and because astrology seems to be indicating that the universe loves us, it's moving us to the middle of this and recognizing our own divinity. And in that process, that gives me tremendous amount of hope and faith. It's why would the universe kind of be disclosing this method of inquiry that is us? It's our connection to the whole, without allowing us, giving us free will to interact with the archetypes, to kind of co-create with them. It doesn't make any sense to me that we would have no free will but be made aware of this reality. It would be like Pinocchio becoming alive but still being controlled by Geppetto with the strings, it just doesn't make sense. Why would we be made aware of it? So anyway, that's where I'll stop. And if you have any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Chad. Oh, there's a question over here. We are technically in our break right now,
Yeah,
but
sorry about that.
we have can spare a few moments.
Chad, it's so great to see you on that side of the camera. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Jamie.
Yeah, I'm curious about in the process of discovering the 3 outer planets and those energies. I guess my question is, do you think? I guess the part of the question is, how much influence do we have over the gods themselves, in addition to the other way around? And if you think that process of discovering those outer planets had any sort of transformative power on the gods themselves, and if not, maybe you could just say maybe how it changed for us personally or culturally.
Sure. Well, to address the first part, I actually do think my intuition, I think Rick's as well, it's the archetypes aren't eternal and unchanging and perfect in and of themselves. It makes more sense that they're actually listening to us in the same way that they're informing our reality. They're absorbing our novel inflections of their archetypal informing our expression. So it's a co-creative process. We're working with them, and like back to the earliest part, like where does exactly what you were talking about, free will, and where are the gods, are they in control, or where are we more in control? That's a big mystery, and I think it varies individually. I think the way it works is the more we become conscious of them and how we're embodying them, how we're working with them, the more agency we have, the more capacity to co-create and genuinely work with them. And I guess I would imagine that the more conscious agency you apply to that process, the more effective it'll be. Astrology is a spiritual discipline. It's a matter of being disciplined to check your transits, deeply study your natal chart first, but then to pay attention to your transits as much as you can. The more you can do it, the more you'll be aware of the archetypal dynamics that are actually in play every day. And then you can, I actually do a little meditation in the morning. I sit, I meditate on my chart, I know where all the planets are. And then if I'm on it, I know where all the transits are too. You can actually get to the moon, and then you can actually meditate on your day and say, how do I want to embody my chart best, also in relationship to the transits that I have? What's the universe asking of me on this day? How can I best be of service or whatever? So that type of thing. Is there other part of your question?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Chad. Yeah, beautiful.